What is Kabbalah? And why are we talking about it? With so much happening in the world today, it would seem like a nice exercise of escapism or just distraction. No, it's not at all the case. Kabbalah has become a catchword in the last years. It's become a word that people talk about. Kabbalah, the mysteries of Kabbalah, of the esoteric, of the secrets of the cosmos. But the truth is, on a very basic level, Kabbalah really is understanding the DNA of what makes us tick, the spiritual DNA of our beings, of existence, of the cosmos, of the entire world. And therefore, if you really want to understand events in your life, large events, small events, global events, wars, confusion, you can look at it on the surface level, or you can look at what is behind the scenes that makes things the way they are. The DNA, the subcellular, the subatomic level of structures that define the phenomenon that our sensory tools experience. Things we see, we hear, we taste, we touch, we smell with our five senses. That's on the outer level. But there's always the forces that are beneath the surface. So the Kabbalah, therefore, in that sense, is actually tremendously relevant. The programs, the classes, everything I teach, they'll call it the psychology, the psycho-spirituality. The psychology and the spirituality of life is all about understanding these forces. So then, of course, the question is, why is it called Kabbalah? What does the word Kabbalah even mean? So the Kabbalah, the word Kabbalah is actually a Hebrew word. It means to receive. That's what Kabbalah means, reception. And it has two meanings. One is, on a very basic level, that Kabbalah is driven by a student receiving it from their master, from their teacher. In other words, Kabbalah is passed on, teacher to student, teacher to student. Obviously, there are books on Kabbalah, there are works of Kabbalah published, digitalized, online. But the real power of Kabbalah can only be passed on from one to the other. Think of it like music, or for that matter, sports. Of course, you can read books, and you can study methodologies, but there's nothing like having a teacher, a music teacher, someone that has the feeling and the experience that's imparted in addition to the facts. The same is true really with all education. Can you learn from a book? Of course you can. But there's something missing if you don't have that personal touch. When it comes to Kabbalah, it's even more important because you're dealing with things that are more subtle and sublime. It's one thing opening up a cookbook and reading a recipe and following it and producing a great delicacy. So that you can do by the book. Even there, real culinary experts want to learn from those before because, again, there's the sublime, there's the unspoken elements between the lines that you can't always convey in a pure recipe. But there, because it's more material and more tangible, it's easier to imagine. But when you're getting into the more poetry of life, the more sublime areas, that requires example. Love. Where do we learn about love? You can read all the books in the world. You'll learn most about it in your impressionable years from your parents. That's where we learn about love. From the people that have loved us, people who love each other. And we learn both ways. Either in a positive way, which would be beautiful, or we sometimes learn the wrong things. And we sometimes come away with impressions that love is something that is not the way it's meant to be, and we think it's a healthy form of expression of love because we saw it and witnessed it in a dysfunctional person. Again, experience. Something that only experience can teach. Things that you can't really quite put into a book. You can attempt to, and you can put many of the elements, but there's always that intangible. What we would call the Spitzenfingergefühl in German. Like intuitive. The Spitzenfinger means like what you feel with the edge of your fingers. You just can't really quite define it, but you sense it. And with Kabbalah, that is critical. And that's why it's called Kabbalah. So even though all of knowledge, of course Torah knowledge as well, is passed on generation to generation, teacher to student, and student to teacher, and so on, generation after generation, nevertheless, when it comes to the more esoteric, the intangible, things that are supersensory, it's even more vital. Because you can't quite quantify it in words and terms. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is because the very experience of Kabbalah means you have to be in a state of reception, in a state of absorption. Let me explain. We'll use a Talmudic statement, very powerful statement. When you're busy absorbing, you can't be busy exuding. When you're busy exuding, you can't be absorbing. When you're speaking, you can't be listening. Definitely not in a complete way. When you're listening, you shouldn't be speaking and can't be speaking. The same as even when it comes to foods. Foods that exude a taste or exude something are not good absorbers. And they're foods that absorb and don't exude. This is vital in life because in truth, real growth, real healthy growth comes when we first absorb and then we process. I often speak about this in context of something I did, which is a very rare activity in the world today, if at all. Remembering and memorizing hours and hours of my masters, my mentor, my teachers' lectures and talks. Speak for hours and hours. On the Sabbath and the holidays, because of the laws of the Torah law, that we don't write and we don't take notes and we don't record. So we had to memorize these hours and hours of talks. As it was once upon a time, pre-technology. So everyone asked the question, how do you memorize? 5 hours, 6 hours? We're talking about over 100 pages without redundancies. And the key to it is what we're describing here. The idea of absorbing, to be Kabbalah, to absorb, to receive. You're now in a reception mode. You're not in a processing mode. You're not analyzing. You're not explaining. You're not trying to understand it even. You're listening. And listening is about absorbing. So if you want to be a good antennae, to really have a good sense of things, you have to learn to listen. No matter how smart you are, that's still what you're giving off, you're exuding. So it's the absorption process. So in addition to reason number one that we need to have that teacher, and it's really an extension of that, it means you're listening to your teacher. We also have to be in a state of Kabbalah, a state of reception. And this is on a very basic level. When you're, let's say, reading a book, you're studying some text, you're listening to a lecture, the ultimate to listen is not to be confusing it and diffusing it, or in any way distorting it with your own thoughts. If you start the middle of this lecture or middle of the words that you're reading with your own analysis, you're going to lose the point. This is something that we need to discipline. Read the text without any ulterior, without any side and preconceived notions. You're just reading a text. What you're doing is you're being a state of Kabbalah. You're receiving. You're absorbing like a dry sponge. And indeed, memory is directly linked to that. Children remember best. They remember the songs, remember the stories, remember events that happened to you, important events, not important. Because a child is like a dry sponge. An adult mind is a saturated sponge. It's already absorbed. It already has ideas, has a framework, has a perspective, which is good to have. But you want to always begin by first having no perspective, by just being absorbing knowledge. So when you're in a state of research, before you come to conclusions, first you have to gather all the information. And then you analyze it. You don't jump to conclusions like a good and healthy situation with a court in a court of law. You have a judge and a jury. So even if there's a persuasive piece of evidence or a persuasive witness, you can't come to a conclusion and say, that guy was persuasive. You have to listen to all the information, to all the evidence, to all the witnesses, and then deliberate. And same thing with research. You have to wait till you gather all the information. Of course, for all you know, the last piece of information may change the picture. May not, but it may. So it's a state of a certain patience, a certain deliberation, refraining from coming to conclusions prematurely. Why is that so vital when it comes to Kabbalah? Because Kabbalah is really that process. It's not about you. It's about the forces that are at work here. If you want to be sensitive to them, if you want to hear the sounds that are usually not discernible, read between the lines. You need to get yourself in a place where you're not processing, where you're not being inundated by the stimulation of your senses, sensory stimulation. In our world, this is more important than ever, the power of silence. We are so overwhelmed and hyperstimulated by all the information that's being streamed in our way. We don't have that ability to just step back and let me just smell the roses. When's the last time you had an eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart conversation with someone without distractions of your phone, texting, or other such distractions? A conversation like that with someone you love, with your children. This is all being in a state of Kabbalah. And then you hear things you will never hear. Because when we're distracted by all the extracurricular sounds, we can't really hear the subtlety. You can't hear that subtle, sublime call from the heart and soul. It's overridden and overwhelmed by the other louder sounds, louder noises. But let us take this back to the very essence of what Kabbalah is. So Kabbalah lays out a blueprint, the building blocks, as I said, the DNA of existence. So to use a simple example, when you see someone cry, you see a tear come out of their eye, or tears. So we all know it's not the tears that make you feel sad. It's because there's a sadness within us. For some reason it has an impact on us, that it wells up in emotions, which in turn translate into the eye ducts that build up some moisture, and that will cause the tear. So when we look at it on the outside in, we see a tear. But someone who's crying, first it begins from, everyone understands, it begins the emotion first, then the tear. Same thing with a smile. A certain contortion on the face that indicates a smile. It doesn't begin with that face. I'm not talking about false smiles or crocodile tears. I'm talking about a real smile. That smile, for whatever reason, is a result of an inner feeling of contentment or fulfillment. And it expresses itself in a physical thing called a smile. The Kabbalah teaches, and the mystics teach us, everything in existence is the same way. Whatever you look at is the tip of the iceberg. It's raining outside. Okay, raining, I need an umbrella, I need a raincoat. I need to adjust for the weather. That's what a basic layperson would say. A meteorologist will say, well, that rain is a result of pressure systems, high pressure, low pressure, winds, and so on. A poet may describe the rain in very romantic terms. And a Kabbalist, a mystic, will explain that the rain is really spiritual energy, maybe spiritual tears. What we only see is the outer expression of it. So everything in life, you go out into a beautiful meadow, and you see green grass, you see birds chirping, you hear birds chirping, beautiful river, trees, flowers, insects. So there's what the naked eye sees, there's what the scientist sees, there's what the naturalist sees, the botanist sees, and the Kabbalah will teach us what are the spiritual energies at work here and how they relate to us. Because everything is microcosm, macrocosm. Everything out there is also within here. So it's really an integrated approach, holistic approach to life, where actually all this subject, when we talk about the physical reality, empirical reality, and then we talk about the chemical makeup, or the biological makeup, or the subatomic physics, or as I discussed, the meteorological makeup, they all have their maps. Kabbalah will bring it all together and say, behind it all, beneath all those layers, comes the spiritual energy that defines that existence, and therefore teaches you how to relate to it. So rain is not just about rain, okay, it's going to water the garden, or water the fields, or we need to protect ourselves, we can't vacation today, or whatever it may be. It actually is a lesson in life. Maybe it's coming as a cosmic wake-up call, a cosmic cleansing, if you wish. Like the tears, as the Kabbalists say, bathe the soul. The rain bathes the earth. It showers it, it cleanses it. The same thing with the winds. So everything in existence suddenly takes on a whole new dimension. So Kabbalah really looks at everything. We talk about conflicts in the world today. So I've written about this extensively. Here's not the place to go into, but just give an example. The confrontations between the three major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Wars that have been battled for years and years and continue to rage. Yeah, things have changed. What is the Kabbalah of these conflicts? What is it signifying? Is it just a battle over land? Is it a religious, ideological battle? What is going on? And when you come to discover, it's actually three spiritual forces at work that are battling for dominance. Yes, some of it can be very nefarious with all kinds of very negative things, but overall, it reflects on deeper struggles that we all have within ourselves. So everything in life becomes not only a lesson, an actual manifestation of deeper spiritual forces at work. So today we talk much about psychology. Psychology is actually Kabbalah of human interactions. What is psychology? I don't just see you, I see you, you're happy or you're sad. Or I see you in a good mood or a bad mood. Psychology says, no, there are forces at work. That there are things that affect our lives. It may be earlier trauma, that we carry the memories within our body. It may be positive experiences. It may be our makeup. It may be ways we're protecting ourselves. So you're basically going beyond the surface of what you see people behave. You see someone angry. Where is it rooted? What are the forces at work? So wherever we're looking at those forces. But for that, you need to be in a state of Kabbalah. You need to be, number one, receive from those before you, because you need to be in that state of receptivity. And also you have to be fundamentally in a state of receptivity. The ultimate good therapist is someone that knows how to listen. You're listening for the inner voices. You're listening for the inner forces. Like, why is this person angry? And you don't get distracted by the outer. Why are this couple not able to communicate with each other? What is the root causes? Not the symptoms. So Kabbalah gets to the root causes. So wherever you turn, the Kabbalah of that experience is the inner dimension that's the root causes of whatever may be happening, which then in turn you can correct it at that root and take it from there. And that's why it's so vital. Now, of course, there's Kabbalah that's quite complex and cryptic, but there's also Kabbalah that's made more easier to understand. Many of my programs and classes are based on Kabbalistic teachings. Sometimes I mention it, sometimes not. But it's based on understanding the forces that are not visible. Those invisible forces that shape all of existence, shape our behavior, shape our interactions. Technology. We're using technology right now. What is technology really? The Kabbalah would say technology is our forces that show us the integral unity that transcends time and space. And that's why we're able to transcend time and space through our broadcasting. So it's really a reflection of inner forces that are uniting things. And so on and on. Everything in existence. I don't know about you, but I'm fascinated by those nature shows. You know, the shows about what's going on under the sea, different species. It's fascinating. The design, the brilliance. The Kabbalah of it would all say these are all experiences in our own lives that teach us things. Just to use one example, quick example, a porcupine, sharp needles, but the softest underbelly to protect itself. Sometimes a person will show aggression because they're protecting their own vulnerability. Just an example. And the list goes on. So much of the Meaningful Life Center's programs are based on these ideas to help us look at the same world that you see, the same people that you have in your life, but see it from the inside out. What are the forces beneath the surface that are making it work? What makes it tick? And for that, we need to also change how we behave. We're not in that aggressive mode, control, dominance, ownership. No, we're the exact opposite. We're in the mode of receptivity. I'm here to absorb. I'm here to receive. I'm here to listen. That changes your whole approach to life. Besides, of course, taming the ego, it also allows you to hear things, see things, taste things, touch things, experience things, smell things that you would not see or hear, taste, touch, or smell otherwise. So really can transform every aspect of your life. There you have a short summary of what is Kabbalah. I want to wish and bless all of us that we should be able to get in touch with that inner force, the soul within everything, and live our lives instead of from the outside in, from body to soul, not the ship telling the captain where to go, but the soul telling your body where to go, from the inside out. Be blessed and be well. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com, where you can find this and many other programs. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our growing YouTube channel. Please share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and feedback. Be well and be